I've worked about 3 or 4 corporate jobs. Working in the corporate environment has been, um, it's been a mix of like good and bad, I guess you could say. So the role I'm currently in has been amazing. Um, and I don't really have any complaints with this role, but it is relatively new. But the previous roles, it was, I would just venture to say very toxic.
I would describe my time working in corporate at that office specifically, or just in an office environment, honestly, as traumatizing and hellish. The only real positive I could say that came out of that specific employment experience is I learned more about how corporate works as an entire system. But I would describe it mostly as traumatizing, hellish, exploitive, and really mentally frustrating, physically frustrating, all types of frustrating.
I've definitely experienced harassment, abuse, all those things in specifically those 2 work environments that I was just referencing.
You have to put on a smile in some ways to be there. They want you to perform and pretend as if this is okay. You like it. You like the environment. You like them. You like working there. You like the energy. You like the vibe, the space. They want to feel like you are okay with them. Even if it's a lie, they want to feel like. So they would rather you just honestly grin and bear it, especially heavy on the grin part. They don't want to see that you are uncomfortable or that the space is hostile for you. Because that makes them have to be accountable, or that's really you just calling out their behaviors. They don't want to hear it. They want to feel like you are okay for them. They want to feel like what they're doing, the culture they're creating is okay with you, because that means that they're somehow okay.
The doctor would just talk to all of us any kind of way, just all types of sideways. Very just, no, I wouldn't even talk to my animals the way she talked to us. Very derogatory. She would even cuss sometimes. My own mother doesn't even talk to me like that. So, less, it was just bad.
The day I walked into this building, I remember distinctly, I was going for an interview. And I was being interviewed basically by 2 of the managers. And one of them was kind and asked normal questions. The other one didn't even introduce himself and literally just looked at me and said, "You don't look like you would know. You don't look like you would know what you're doing." And so I responded with being well, if you want to find somebody else from the job, hands up. I'm not gonna, you're immediately just casting me off with suspicion, you wouldn't know what you're doing just by looking at me. No questions asked, no anything asked, just you don't know what you're doing. So obviously that was racial profiling and gender stereotyping very clearly. So that initial interaction immediately set the tone for what my interactions with this person would be from then on.
So one particular job, this sounds ridiculous, but I literally had heart palpitations. And I think at the time I was 20, maybe 23, 24. But it was just a really, really, really high stress environment. We weren't allowed to, I wouldn't say we weren't allowed, but it was definitely looked upon if you took breaks or if you ate and stuff like that. It was always you're supposed to be a workhorse, forget you and your needs. So if your body's working off of nothing, it's it's just not going to work. And I'm talking like months of doing this. So it was months of working at this job. Where we would go in and work 12-hour shifts on top of not eating or anything like that. Well, between 10 and 12-hour shifts. So that one I had like heart palpitations one time. My blood pressure was sky high a lot of days. So just being like very weak, constant headaches all the time. And that wasn't necessarily because like I honestly didn't want to go there, but I think that was just like a lack of eating and lack of taking care of myself, because it was definitely an issue whenever you did those things in that work environment.
One of the male employees called me the C word in the office, in front of other male employees, and like tried to like whisper it as if I wouldn't hear it, and said that aloud. Called me the C word.
As an African American, working in a corporate world where that world is not for you to benefit, right? I mean, like I said, I would just say do what you do, but also understand that people are not going to understand you. Don't expect somebody to understand you or know where you're coming from, because they don't have the same experiences as you. And empathy and sympathy are two different things. So you may empathize with me, but sympathizing with me is a little different.
Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I was the only black woman in that space. There were other black men there, but there were no black women. There were only white women and white men, black men. There were no black women. There were no like women of color in that space. Besides me, I was there briefly. There's an invisibility to your presence because they're totally dismissive of your experience. I mean, there's no consideration that you would have an experience other than their own. And obviously, as a black person, your experience is totally different than theirs. You're not even looking at this like corporate structure in the same way that they are. So any black woman who is aware of her identity and stands in her own identity as a black person, as a woman, those spaces are going to be confrontational to you. Like, those are not going to be welcome, safe spaces. It's 9 times out of a lot of times it's going to be hostile.
Yeah, I think one way to make African Americans maybe feel more welcomed in the corporate world would be just to have a level of understanding that like the experience is very different, and not just seeing things from the eyes of your own lens. Being any sort of minority, you're going to have a very different experience in the workforce. And even if you did not provide that experience for this individual in this particular career or employment, they're coming from some other experiences, not saying that's your problem or your fault, that may make them more on guard, jaded, defensive, you know what I mean? So not saying that you have to encourage those things, but just have a level of understanding, I think, more than anything. And then for the people or the African Americans who are being employed, I think the biggest takeaway is just think of work as a place you go, clock in, clock out. Don't make it any more than that, I don't think. It's not your second home. These are not your friends. This is not a place to party and have fun. Do your job and get out of there. Because I promise you, everything you do is being looked at, critiqued, judged, all of those things. And it's not perceived the same way as if somebody of a different race were to do those very things. So just really be careful, because not everybody has your best interest. So I personally just treat work as a place where I clock in, clock out, do my job, and go home. I really try to keep things to a minimal when I'm talking to like even coworkers that I work with every day, because it's just like, or maybe just a little bit more surface level. So